So, we've talked about the story of Battle for Azeroth. Let's talk about the content. In fact, let's talk about the improvements to the content that have happened over the majority of this expansion, which has just kind of shown that Blizzard's a little stupid. They are very stupid and they are very stubborn. I'm not going to be nice about this. This is the truth. What do I mean by saying they are stupid and they are stubborn? Well, during Battle for Azeroth testing, Mythic Plus dungeons is a thing. It's a really cool thing. The dungeons get harder. Diablo Greater Rifts, if you play Diablo. If not, it's like you do a dungeon, and you can do +3, which is like so much percent harder. Then you can do a +6, which is like so much percent harder, and like more enemies or exploding enemies, stuff like that. Now, Legion had legendaries that could pop out of this chest at the end of the week that would reward you gear as strong as the highest key that you did. Now, it could be a regular piece of gear and then a chance at a legendary. And you had a chance at a second piece, as far as I remember. So, in BfA, through a vast majority of the testing, until 3 weeks before the beta was taken offline, so after everyone already tested it, they were like, hey, Azerite gear, which is very unique. Azerite gear is very unique. The only way to get really high level Azerite gear, which is the main thing for this expansion in terms of power progression, is to do mythic dungeons and raids. Now, to get them out of a Mythic Plus dungeon, it would not come in the end of chest reward. It would only come in that weekly. In testing, Azerite gear was guaranteed with a chance at regular gear. So this was a way for people to kind of target Azerite gear. 3 weeks before the testing was taken off, they just merged all the loot into one drop. And once this came out, once it launched, once the first weekly reset happened where people were able to get something out of the chest, they realized that a lot of them weren't getting Azerite gear. So they asked, and the response they got was rude. And due to recent information that came out on Twitter, it's no wonder it was rude. The developers have an ego problem. And a lot of them are like, you're the fucking peanut gallery, you're just players, we're developers, we know what we're doing. And that's how they respond. They're like, well, it was like this, so it's obviously not a bad thing. And I want to keep something in mind. The developers that were doing this still work on the game. The developers that responded like this are still there. There was another developer on the forum that was talking about Titan Forging. What Titan Forging is, it's a random upgrade to your armor. Now, before you take into account Titan Forging, which can take, say, you raid Heroic, so your gear drop is an item level of 400. Just a ballpark. But you go to LFR, where the gear drop is 370. And Mythic is 430. Well, you can go into LFR, a piece can drop, and it can Titan Forge up to 435. So you can have a best-in-slot item from the lowest possible thing that you can do. This was a big problem in Legion. People complained about it. What did these devs say? Well, you just don't like seeing other people get upgrades. It's really exciting when Titan Forging happens. Like, it's disappointing when it doesn't. Also, they added something else. But before I get too far off, they changed the Mythic Plus rewards, and they're like, oh, we already did this. You don't need to worry about it. We know what we're doing. Interestingly enough, they changed this a month or so later to now just give us Titan Residuum, which is a currency that you use to buy Azerite gear. I thought they knew better. I thought the Blues telling everyone, oh, you just don't like Titan Forging because other people get upgrades, knew better, but Titan Forging isn't in the game right now, is it? Something else that they did in Battle for Azeroth is they changed how Mythic Plus dungeons worked. It used to be you would go into a Mythic Plus dungeon. You could change your gear, you could change your talents, you could even change your spec. Right? Keep in mind, none of this was required for the content that most people would do, right? Because the gear acquisition stopped once you hit a plus 15. Once you did a plus 15 once, you were done for the week. You could not get anything higher in the weekly chest. That was as far as you would go for power. However, it's World of Warcraft. There are tons of people that played this game. So people were like soloing plus 20s as tanks, or people were going as high as plus 35s, and now there's a Mythic Dungeon Invitational for people that push the highest numbers. And it's very important to know that once you got to plus 17, some people needed to swap gear. Because if you didn't swap to a more defensive set that would give you a big chunky shield, you could be one-shot by unavoidable damage from certain bosses. That's just how it worked. But Blizzard didn't care, because they marketed this as a change so people didn't feel like they were required to have multiple sets of gear. And the forums were saying, oh yeah, only autistic assholes have multiple sets of gear they change on every trash pack, which didn't happen. And it's happening again with the Covenant system, where it's obviously a bad idea in a lot of aspects, and people are defending it saying, you change your Covenant ability on every trash pull. No! That's not how it works, you retards. I'm getting kind of worked up over this because it's stupid! So they made it to where you can't change talents, you can't change spec, and you can't change gear. This is really bad, because you would get going so far into a dungeon and your healer or tank drops. So you burned your key, which means it goes down a level, which means you have to find someone new. Instead of possibly going in there, oh, your healer leaves? Well, you've got two really good DPSers, so that third DPSer has a heal spec, so we can just swap. Okay, can't do that now. So what else does Blizzard do? Blizzard fucks with raid guilds, because back in Legion, they changed how Master Looter worked. What's Master Looter? Master Looter is essentially, when you kill a boss, it drops 4 items. Master Looter allows the raid leader or Master Looter to take an item and assign it to somebody. That's fine. People are like, oh, I got ninja, blah, blah, blah. 99.9% of the time, it was a lie. In BfA, they're like, well, Trials deserve loot too. Because Blizzard, whose current developer, Ian Hazzikostas, also known as Watcher, who was at one point a high mythic raider, Trials deserve loot too. Apparently Trials don't get loot, which is wrong, by the way. Trials get all the loot we want. That is how it works. That is how it's always worked. There is nothing where Trials don't get loot unless you're in a shit guild anyways. So they made it to where only guild groups could have it in Legion. That's fine. In order to have a guild group, you need at least 75% of the group to be in the same guild. Okay, and if you plug into a guild group that has Master Looter, you know how it's going to work. You essentially consent to getting fucked over if that's how it's going to go. Some guild groups don't care. They're doing farm content for one guy, for one guy's gear, so you get all the other gear. That's how it worked. And, oh, Trials deserve loot too. Let me tell you something about how raiding works in World of Warcraft. Let's say that I join a raid guild now, right? I join a raid guild and they have 4 out of 10 bosses down. So those 4 bosses they've had down for weeks and they're working on the 5th one. So I go in, we kill the 4 bosses, then we kill the 5th boss. A piece of loot drops. Now this is before the BfA change, which got rid of Master Looter entirely. A piece of loot drops. I really want the loot, but it goes to someone who's already been there for a while. Does that seem unfair? Kind of, because I went there, I don't even have a chance of getting it. You don't want to roll it off. You just give it to them. That seems unfair on the surface, right? And that's what a lot of these ninja looting stories came out when it was announced in BfA that Master Looter would be removed. And it's like, that seems like a bitch move, right? But in reality, what happens is that a trial is there for four of the farm bosses, right? Those bosses that they've already killed multiple weeks. More than likely going to get loot because other people already have their gear from it, especially now that Titan forging is gone, by the way. And so when they kill that fifth boss, the new guy wasn't there. Maybe this guild wiped for hours, and they've been progressing for weeks, and they wiped for hours and hours on it. Maybe that guy earned it, right? Maybe the trial died like 2 minutes into the fight. The dude that got it undoubtedly earned it. But, of course, we can't say that because that's elitist thinking. So, in BfA, Master Looter was gotten rid of for personal loot. People found a workaround. You just trade loot because guess what? If you're in a raid guild, it makes more sense for it to go to people. Right? Well, that wasn't good enough because then there were reports of people feeling pressured to trade loot. And as we all know, you can't say no when someone says, give me this thing of pixels. You can never say no to that. So Blizzard adds in an item level lock. So for example, let's say I have a pair of 400 bracers. We kill a boss. Another pair of 400 bracers drops for me in my personal loot. I can trade that to you, who only has 370, right? But if we kill a boss in higher difficulty and a pair of 430 drops, I can't trade that because it's a higher item level. It's kind of common sense, right? Well, it would be if item level was king. Because Blizzard's like, we want you to care about item level. Item level should be an indicator of how good the gear is. That has never been true for the majority of Battle for Azeroth. It's already been 12 minutes. Can you tell how badly these systems suck now? So, that was kind of okay. Like, the item level lock, it kind of makes sense. It's like, it's dumb. It's dumb when I say it kind of makes sense. I mean, like, if you're dumb, you think it makes sense. So people found ways around it. You would craft gear with a higher item level and then raid and be able to trade it without, like, as long as you equip that crafted gear once, you know. But Titan forging also exists. Titan forging works against this system because if I have a pair of 400 bracers and you have 370 and, well, the bracers that drop for me are 405, but their stats are so shit that I wouldn't wear them anyways, I can't trade them to you because it's a higher item level. So they get disenchanted. So nobody gets the loot, so it's a dead piece of loot. Well, something that I also like to do is I play a monk, so I have access to heal and tank. So I have access to two-handed weapons, offhand, stuff like that. So sometimes if we're on a boss, it's like, oh, this is a really good piece of healing gear. I would switch to that mostly for trinkets, but I remember a few times healing weapons would drop. Now, the thing about the weapons in World of Warcraft is apparently Blizzard, when they introduced this item level loot trade restriction, didn't figure out how to make it work with weapons of all types. So what happened was I had two 430 weapons. We were going through normal mode. Normal drops 400. We have a new healer who needed loot. Well, we kill a boss. A healing offhand drops. For me, 430. Huge upgrade for the other guy. I can't trade it because I don't have an offhand of a similar item level. Same thing has happened with tank weapons. Essentially, the only thing I've been guaranteed to be able to trade throughout this entire thing is trinkets, and it's stupid. Something else that also went against the item level is king thing is something called benthic gear. You see, when we were fighting Queen Azshara, we were able to create this gear that had special bonuses specifically for that raid and zone, including 2% extra crit damage, extra bleed, extra execute damage, stuff like that. Really powerful bonuses. In fact, these bonuses were so powerful that even a basic piece without any upgrades, as long as you had a socket and that one bonus on it, would be stronger than the 65 item level higher piece that you had. So, for example, if I had a 400 piece of benthic gear with the right thing, it would be stronger than a 460 piece without it. It would just be stronger. That's how it worked. That's dumb, right? Am I the only one that thinks that's dumb? Apparently not. But then Blizzard came out. They're like, well, we didn't intend for gem slots to happen, because what people were doing was known as the prismatic pearl shuffle. Because when you do the intro, you get so many pearls, and so you would use the pearls to purchase pieces, send it to your main, use the pieces, get the best thing, maybe upgrade them, not really needed. As long as you got the socket, that's all that mattered. So that really fucked with shit. And then in 8.3, they're like, we're getting rid of Titan Forging, which was a really good change for someone like me who's like, yay, I can trade gear again. Thank you, Blizzard. We're giving you corruption, which sounds like a really cool thing, because you get a piece and it has like 50 corruption. Well, that corruption can like spawn little ads that attack you or slow you or something. But in exchange, you like fire a giant beam that deals a ton of damage randomly, or you get more haste or more crit or more verse or do extra bleed damage or stuff like that. It was really cool. And you had ways of reducing the possible corruption that you would have. It was fun. It was a decently thought out system. The problem was the corruption that you would get had multiple ranks for no reason. So you could get a rank 1 on one item, which is like a 2% mastery boost, and then a rank 3, which is 12% mastery boost. And the corruption would change. It started off that it was random. By the way, it started off that it would be random. So you could have a rank 3 bonus with only like 5 corruption, or a rank 1 bonus with 30 corruption. So that was a thing. And then there are some corruptions that scale with item level. For example, Infinite Stars, really heavy hitting ability, like strongest hitting corruption out there for most specs in the game. It scaled with item level. So if you had a rank 3 on a 400 piece, it wasn't amazing. But if you had a rank 3 on like a 430 piece, that was so much better. So much better. And that's how the corruption system works. It's like, hey, can we have a way to target these? Nah. Then Blizzard's like, you can buy corruptions now. Oh, they're on a weekly cycle though. Why? Because. And it's like, you also had essences. You see, Azerite gear was really important in the beginning of the game because it has traits that changes how you play. And in 8.1, they added more traits. Like, yeah, we're going to get some traits going on. 8.2, they didn't add new Azerite traits. Not really. I mean, there were still a couple generic ones, but they didn't add any new class ones. So, did they add them in 8? No, it was 8.1. Because that's when I got, like, Dance of Chi-Ji. So, in 8.2, they added essences. What is an essence? Essentially a covenant ability. You get one button, which depending on your essence does different things. Like one could be a Kamehameha beam, one could summon shards to like help you. If you're a healer, it could blanket the raid and shields, stuff like that. You would get these essences in their different ranks. That's right, there were different ranks, including rank 4 legendary, which for a majority of them were RNG rewards. That's right, a lot of them were RNG rewards. It's dumb. Really, really dumb. Or you would have to do a high enough Mythic Plus dungeon, or get high enough arena rating, which was really interesting because the PvP essence was best in slot in PvE. So you had a lot of raiders doing a lot of arena. But it wasn't account-wide, it was character-specific. So you had them doing it multiple ways, and then it's like, well, why would it be account-wide? It's player power. We don't want to muddy the waters. Only to, in 8.3, say, well, we understand that you don't want to do the grind multiple times, so as long as you unlock it on one character, if you do the weekly events, you collect this currency and you can buy it for your other characters. Thank fucking God. It's almost like you guys learned this lesson back in Legion with legendaries. Literally every system that Blizzard has made in BfA has been compromised later because They realize they're too fucking dumb. They're like, oh, well, the devs aren't that bad. No, the devs are, because we've seen things from players where they were told they don't know how to play the game. Where theory crafters are blamed for the meta that rose in the game. No. Theory crafters aren't to blame for the fact that in your tournaments, people are using 3 rogue DPSers. Okay? Theory crafters aren't to blame for that. The fact that you can't balance classes and you have rogues which have extreme utility, including a stealth that allows people to get past useless trash packs while at the same time dealing amazing damage, that's your fault. When a theory crafter tells you that this ability is broken and it won't work and it's too overpowered and you launch it anyways, that's not their fault when you nerf it later. Because Blizzard has done this all throughout Battle for Azeroth. They launch a system. They get told the system doesn't work. They're like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. And then, when they eventually change it, they're like, we listened to your feedback and we agree. It's like, motherfucker, you don't agree. You just got called out on it and you can't really justify it anymore. You don't agree. You told us we were stupid. So fuck off. And also, Blizzard has a really, really bad track record with their hiring policy for writers. Because a lot of their writers are a little bit racist. Just a little bit. Saying that all white men should die is kind of not a good thing. But anyways, I digress. Their systems are shit. The same thing's happening in Shadowlands. In fact, the lead developer lied in an interview. Because Preach, while interviewing Watcher, said, hey, we want to be able to swap because this isn't balanced. You know, this is the first time in the game that we're not going to be able to do this stuff. And Watcher's like, do you really want the only difference between 2 players that play the exact same class and the exact same gear to be who plays better? Like, yeah, that's what we want. As players, if we are playing competitively, we want the only thing that determines our competitiveness to really be our skill. You should know this. You were once a top raider. It's like, well, if it comes to the point where, you know, we can't balance this, we'll pull that ripcord and make it to where you can swap easily. Then, like, 2 weeks later, after people got more hands-on with the sisters, like, pull the ripcord. It won't work. They're like, there is no ripcord to pull. So you lied! You lied just to get out of the point where you were called out for something being dumb and not working. Like, well, we can balance it. No, in a game that you can't. No game can balance an AoE ability and a single target ability, right? If I have a kick that deals 50 damage to 3 people, that's 150 damage if there are 3 targets. So that's AoE. And then I have a single target ability that deals 150 damage to a single person, right? But it's not AoE. I can't balance that, because if you try using the AoE ability in single target, you do 1/3 of the damage. Well, how do I balance that? Well, you boost the damage of the AoE ability, but then that makes it to where the single target ability is useless to use in single target, so you're just using the AoE ability, which is something that Blizzard's run into a lot this expansion. In fact, they had to completely rework a spec recently just so it worked, because in Battle for Azeroth, you removed a lot of stuff. You're like, we don't want button bloat. Bitch, why not? Why not? Why remove something that hunters can use so they can see through the eyes of their pet and run around as their pet? Why is that a bad thing? Why does that need to be removed? Oh, button bloat. Who the fuck would care, right? Like, you don't have to put it on your bar. Right? You can just have it in your spellbook and not care about it. Oh, button bloat. No, it's not button bloat. It's called people, like, fucking controlling themselves. Right? And some people are like, good, this is a meaningful choice. No, not being able to swap between covenants easily doesn't make the choice meaningful. The covenant essentially comes down to one ability and a few passives that don't affect how your class plays. Congratulations, it's a talent. Just make it a talent row. No, it's more than a talent. Just make it to where we can swap the abilities. Personally, I really like the idea of swapping between covenants, you know, being really difficult and pledging yourself to one, getting the cosmetic rewards like the armor and all that shit. I don't like the fact that there's player power tied to it for the first time in over 17 years. Oh, well, that would completely ruin the idea of the Covenant. The Covenant are based around the abilities. No, they're not. They're not based around the ability. You know how I can tell? Because each Covenant ability has minimal interaction with the Covenant itself. You have one conduit for the Covenant ability per Covenant per class. So a monk in the Kyrian Covenant has one conduit. One conduit. Oh, well, the Soulbind ability is affected. One Soulbind ability. One Soulbind ability out of that entire Covenant affects your ability. And guess what? It doesn't affect how you play with it. It's a stat boost. It's a generic stat boost. Why? Because it has to be. Because these Soulbinds aren't spec or class specific. So it has to be generic. And a majority of the class abilities are fucking generic. Oh, well, it wouldn't really make a lot of sense to have a Kyrian player popping a Necrolord ability. Really? Really? It wouldn't? Why wouldn't it? Why would that matter? Why would that matter to the player if they're in a Kyrian Covenant and they want to pop an Venthyr ability? Oh, it would ruin my immersion. How? How so? Because my Monk Kyrian ability has no visual. No visual outside of me turning blue for 30 seconds. Or 20 seconds. And the Venthyr ability, pops a little portal. Night Fae ability puts a line on the ground. Which, by the way, if you have graphics turned off for other people, you won't see! The Necrolord ability, it's a small AoE that disappears. So my ability doesn't affect you in any way, shape, or form. At all. But you have to be like, oh no, we can't do that because that would ruin my immersion. Fuck you. Fuck you. You just want to take away choice. That's the kind of players I hate. And the fact that the devs, like, use this, they know what part of the community to feed into with this crap, it pisses me off, man. It pisses me